Pat McAfee Show. Nick Saban addresses the challenge of NIL in college football. We have discussed this quite a bit. The NIL, the transfer portal, player power, however you want to phrase it, is an interesting conundrum in college football, specifically for coaches like Nick Saban, because it kind of goes against what Saban wants to do. Saban wants to recruit and tell his players, if you listen to me, we'll get you to the league. If you listen to what I'm saying, we'll get you to that big payday. We'll get you to the league. But for the players who are already getting that big payday because of NIL, they don't really need Saban. Obviously, playing in Alabama is still a big deal, but it makes recruiting much easier for schools that don't have a Nick Saban. Because now a kid can go to like Oregon, Bo Nix can go to Oregon instead of trying to go to Alabama, get his NIL money, show out, get paid, and probably still go to the league. So it kind of balances the playing field of recruiting instead of it being, and I think that's why we're seeing teams like Clemson kind of fall apart, is that they don't have the same leverage anymore. They don't have this huge leg up that they did for the last 5 years. Before, recruiting was basically 5 or 6 teams had the pick of the litter. So it was like Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. But now you're starting to see the Michigans of the world, the Oregons of the world, the Colorados of the world. You're starting to see them, USC, Texas. You're starting to see these schools be able to recruit much more competitively because of the power of NIL. Devil's advocate, what NIL does, the negative, is it destroys the balance between the top, I'd say, 30 schools and the rest of the country. NIL makes it to where San Jose State, Southern Mississippi, South Alabama, schools like that, they cannot compete at the highest level. You will not have another situation where Boise State comes out of nowhere to beat whatever team and go on a run because they don't have the funding to get the players. So even though it balances the power of the top 30-ish, it kind of kills parity in college football. Or really college sports. College basketball is always going to have parity, but college football, I'd say now there's the top 30, and then there's the rest of the country. But there is no more, like I said, a San Diego State, a San Jose State, Nevada, teams like that. They just don't have the money to possibly compete with a very highly funded school like Oregon.
I would like to spotlight one thing you brought up there about how handling humility and testing humility whenever people are kind of lifting you up. When I was in college, I was on full scholarship to kick balls. Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Did it. Way to go. Good for me. Shout out me. Wasn't offered by any school you were coaching at. Thanks, coach. But only kicking 70 yarders as an 18-year-old. Don't worry about it. But when I got a full scholarship to school, my parents don't have a bunch of extra money, so I didn't want to ask them for any. And at the time, the scholarship checks were what they were. I actually got a loan out in the amount of like $40,000 to just go have a good time. And if I always put myself in the modern position of these guys, it's not great, coach. I should have focused a lot more. We live, we learn, we get older, we mature. Some of these guys are making like millions of dollars to play college football.
It's kind of hard to even imagine, really. It's kind of hard to imagine being the 18, 19-year-old kid in college with $1 million. Like, that alone is hard to imagine. But then it's hard to imagine being someone who is a superstar. I know when I was growing up, or when I was like starting to really watch college football, USC teams were like the superstars. Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush, but they weren't multi-millionaires. They were famous, and they were in Los Angeles, and they were partying, and they were in the limelight, and they were dating Paris Hilton, but they weren't making millions and millions of dollars. And you may say, yes, they were. It was just under the table. I don't know. But for these kids to be on campus and to be making millions of dollars while also being like the king of campus, it's hard to... I don't want to be the old man yelling at the sky or whatever, but it's hard to imagine it not having a negative effect on the players as prospects. There's just something to having that much money, having that much fame, having that much success. It's got to make you work less. It's got to make you less hungry. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's hard to imagine a 19, 20-year-old 18, 19, 20-year-old at USC, in the middle of Los Angeles or Miami or even Texas or any of these schools, and they're already the man, but then they're driving around in a Rolls Royce. It's such a different world. I don't know. It's got to be so hard for the players and coaches to operate on a normal basis.
18, 19-year-olds. And I wondered about the ripple effect of like commitment, discipline, accountability, hard work. Because if I was those kids, there's no way I'm showing up at 6 a.m. off-season workouts with the same attitude. Have you seen that? And how do you think, do you just think this generation's different? They can handle it? I'm a doofus? Like, how do we handle that situation? Because I think we're going to miss out on some greats potentially because of maybe getting too content early.
That's what I think.
Well, I think that it obviously tests your maturity as a young man when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, and you have a little more to deal with than what we did back in the day when we went to school. And I do think that it's a challenge to how hungry you are, how motivated you are. You know, we all went to school because we're trying to create value for our future.
So exactly. Like, and another part of it just is no matter what else, no matter the discipline, the hunger, all that stuff, that's like a person by person basis. No matter who you are, that's definitely going to create more distraction. We see it all the time, right? A rookie gets drafted. The first thing they always talk about is the distractions. You know, now you have all this money, you're paying for your family stuff, you're paying for your friends' stuff, you know, all these opportunities are coming in, you're doing things you've never done before. Now you're going to the nice restaurants, the nice bars, the nice this, the nice that, buying the nicest clothes. That distraction seeps in. And when you have the maturity level of an 18, 19, 20-year-old, I mean, it has to be bad. It has to be a negative for growth and all of that. What I really wanted to emphasize with this whole conversation is what it does to the Sabans of the world. You can feel a power shift, I think so at least, between college football right now. If you look at Nick Saban, you look at Colorado, you can almost feel the swing of college football kind of going towards Colorado's, we'll call it their like business plan of this like super highly marketable thing, this glitz and glamour and celebrity and pomp and circumstance and quotes and, you know, the social media teams and everything behind it. The players are stars, you know, like immediately. That is seemingly where college football is going as far as like where players want to play. Alabama and teams like that seem kind of like they're stuck in the past. Like they're stuck in the just come here, do 2-a-days. We're going to put you through a grueling process. We're going to win ugly football, basically. I don't know. I mean, I made this point a few weeks ago where I said if you ask 100 kids in high school, where do you want to go play college football? I think the majority of kids would say Colorado. And that's crazy. That's wild. I think if you asked, and maybe I'm wrong, let me know in the comments below. I think if you asked 1,000 kids, 1,000 recruits, the top 1,000, that's a lot. Top 500, the top 1,000, you might trickle into getting me in there. I might be the 1,000th recruit. The top 500 recruits right now in high school, seniors of high school, if you said you can go to Alabama or Colorado next year, how many of them do you think would pick Alabama? What percentage? Do you think it'd be 60-40 Alabama? Do you think it'd be 50-50? Do you think it'd be skewing towards Colorado? Because even if it's 60-40, even if 40% of them say, I want to go to Colorado, that's wild. Colorado has done nothing in 30 years, maybe even longer. They were arguably the worst Power 5 team in the nation last year. And just because of social media, marketing, Deion Sanders, the whole social media aspect of it, the glitz and the glamour, everything we talked about, just because of that, if you swing that many players to want to go there over Alabama, which has been in the national championship basically every year for the last 15 years, a 7-time national champion head coach, put however many Heisman winners, however many first-round draft picks, however many SEC championships and wins and all that stuff, if all of that isn't comparable or comparable, as some of my friends would say, if that's not comparable to clout, it's a weird landscape in college football.
And we were scared to death that we were going to either fail out of school or fail as a player or lose our scholarship or whatever. And that was a real motivating factor for us. And, players have more, which I think it's good for the players.
We agree.
I'm not against that. So I don't want anybody to think I'm against that. But I do think you have to have a certain amount of maturity to be able to manage that and not get satisfied with what's happening, that you have more, but how does it affect your motivation on the field in terms of how good you want to be and the standard that you want to set? And that comes from kind of within who you are.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So I think it's important.
Let me make that clear too. The players should get paid. I've always said the players should get paid. I think NIL and the transfer portal and everything, I think it has a lot of work to be done to make it benefit the team, the player, the everything, the structure of college football. I think right now it's a little bit insidious to where it's kind of cannibalizing like what we love about college athletics. I think we probably need to do something. I don't know, that's a conversation for a different day, but I think it does need to be reeled in a bit. I do think the players should get paid, no doubt about it. And like Nicholas said, it is the individual player. Like, not every player, just because they get $1 million doesn't mean they can't end up being good. Just because they make $1 million doesn't mean they won't show up to practice, they won't play hard, they won't get, like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it offers so many more distractions and so much more chance of falling into that complacency or falling into those, the lifestyle of being a 19-year-old millionaire. There's nothing wrong with that, getting paid. Then the players should get paid. And it's not across the board. But I would assume it's much harder as a 20-year-old to wake up for 2-a-days when you have $5 million in the bank versus when you're thinking, I've got to put the work in for the next couple of years so that I can sign that contract or go to the NFL or make it to the big time.
To have the right kind of guys on your team now.
Yeah, when you're recruiting, obviously these are things you're trying to pick up, little tails. I think we talked to Prime and Coach Prime, and he said that when they're on these recruiting visits, they'll hear something said between either the player and the mom or the player and the dad or the uncle and the dad say something, and it's like not even a part of the interview, but he hears something, he's like, ooh, that's a little something that we have to hear. How do you kind of figure out who's right for your culture? Because it feels like over the last, I don't know how many years you've been coaching, it feels like you're a factory of just great player, hard worker, somebody who's willing to sit behind another 5-star. How do you find those guys? Like, what are some of your tricks and tips, I guess?
Well, I think you got to ask a lot of questions. I think if you ask direct questions, whether it's to high school coaches, guidance counselors, the players themselves. Like I ask a guy a lot of times, what do you want to accomplish as a college player? They tell me, and I say, well, what does that entail? And what do you have to do to be a great player? So if the guy's sitting there 50 pounds overweight and he says nothing, then I'm like, oh.
Another part of NIL that we've yet to see, is, and I always use Jameis Winston and Johnny Manziel as the examples. Jameis Winston wins the Heisman as a freshman. If that happens now, like let's say whoever, let's pretend, all right? Pretend, well, it's a little different because he's the son of the coach, but pretend someone like Shedeur Sanders is a freshman and he wins the Heisman. What happens whenever USC or Oregon or a super funded school says, hey, look, how about this? You transfer here, we'll give you $10 million. What happens? I would think the player's going to go. Either that or wherever school he's at has to pony up $10 million. That is what I think is where we're headed, and that's what's going to really change college football. Let's use Quinn Ewers. He's a good example. Let's say Quinn Ewers wins the Heisman and Texas wins the national championship. And let's say all of a sudden Oregon says, we'll give you $15 million to come here. He's going to turn around and look at Texas and say, hey, guys, what are y'all about to do? And then Texas is going to have to crowdfund, which I'm sure they can, $15 million or better to keep him there. And if he's at a school if a player's at a school and it's a smaller school, he's gone. He's gone. Once the big schools come knocking and they offer that big check, that is going to be the reckoning of the NIL. Is when, because right now you hear like 1.5 million, 2 million a year, whatever. When it gets up there, when it gets up to that $10 million world, and all of a sudden now, instead of just making a couple $1 million, you got a guy at school who's now made $30-40 million. And it will happen. It will happen. We will see a Tim Tebow. We will see a Johnny Manziel. We will see a Cam Newton. We will see these players who come in. They are media superstars, and they're also the best player in college. And that's when it's really going. Don't look at me like that, Nick. Don't look at me like that.
This guy must not have the right stuff, you know. But
He's got a lot of stuff
things that he needs to do to be a great player. Then I say this guy can self-assess, and he's got direction and goals, and he's motivated and wants to do the right things. But I think that is the most difficult thing to try to evaluate in recruiting. It's not how fast the guy is or how high he can jump. It's, you know, what is his mental makeup? What is his psychological disposition toward being successful? And that's the hardest thing to judge.
So I assume you have good faith in your team right now, going through some stuff. You know, it's real loud outside. Everybody has kind of written you off. I'm sure you've heard it. Alabama, what are we talking about? They don't even know who their quarterback is. You know what I mean? They're writing you off right now. I assume you have good faith in the cut of your team's jib this year and 100% faith we can go get it still?
Imagine if he answered this any other way than yes. Like, imagine if he was like, I don't think we got it this year, Pat. Not going to lie to you. Kind of giving up on these kids.
I do believe in our team, and I think we got a lot of good people on our team. I think they've worked hard. I don't think we've executed and played as well as we're capable of. So that's a work in progress and something that we need to improve on and improve quickly. It's attention to detail, having discipline to do the little things right, creating those habits every day, you know, in practice in terms of what you do. So that's a challenge, and that's something that it'll be interesting to see how this team responds to that challenge, because it's something that we need to do better.
There you go. Interesting. It is a evolving kind of situation. It is something we'll have to watch and monitor and see how it all plays out. It's the old toothpaste thing, where once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's hard to put it back. You know, once NIL is where it's at now, it's hard to all of a sudden restructure it. It's hard to all of a sudden take parts of it away, or, you know, I just don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know how it's going to eventually play out. The right answer, or the closest thing I think we're getting to, is basically a minor league for the NFL, where you're going to have those 30 to 40-ish teams make up the powered conferences, which we're already seeing happen. We're already seeing the Big Ten look like they're going to expand at 20-plus teams. You know, like, there's going to be 4 or 5 conferences. There's going to be Big Ten, the SEC, you know, Pac-12, whatever it ends up being. It's going to end up just a couple conferences with 40 total schools. And I think those schools are going to play each other, and that'll be it. That'll be the big media drivers and the big TV deals. That's going to be what we're headed towards, where you're basically playing in that mini NFL before you go to the NFL. The way it looks to me, the days of Alabama playing Northern Illinois are over. I think you'll have the minor league thing, and then you'll have the rest of college football, which will basically be like D2 or something. But that's just how I see it playing out in the future. Other sports are different, but let me know in the comments below what you think about the NIL, what you think about the transfer portal, all that stuff. How do you see college football kind of moving and shaking? And I'm really interested. Again, think about the Colorado thing. Do you think the top 500 recruits right now, what percentage of them would rather go to Colorado next year than Alabama? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I will see you on the next video.